Thank everyone for coming out. First of all, our superintendent of the state police, Stephen James, who's been my staunch ally as we continue to fight crime in the state of New York. We'll be acknowledging, and you'll be hearing from a district attorney, Lee Kindlin from Albany County, Sheriff Craig Apple from Albany County, and district attorney from my home county, Michael Kane, who traveled some distance to be here. Also, my other partners in law enforcement, Sheriff Juan Figueroa from Ulster County, district attorney Anthony Parisi from Dutchess County, Chief Brendan Cox, the Albany Police Department, Deputy Chief James Holt from the Utica Police Department. Our County Executive Dan McCoy is here. Also, I want to thank Senator Pat Fahey for joining us, as she often does, and Assembly Member Romero has joined us as well. So I want to thank everyone for being here. Wish we didn't have to be here. People say, why are you here today? We did this event back in January 7th, I believe we presented what has come to our attention from law enforcement, a real problem where people have access to creating more lethality, more weapons of mass destruction in their kitchen table. But it's great to be back at the State Police Forensic Investigation Center. I want to thank them every time I come here. Grateful to all of you for what you do, keeping us safe here, and the connectivity that we have between the data that's analyzed here and our local policing agencies has made an incredible difference, and we've spread these all over the state. You know, when I first became governor in 2021, gun crimes, serious crimes, violent crimes were literally off the charts. It was a frightening time. Gun violence had doubled since the pandemic in previous 2 years. And it wasn't just New York. It was part of a nationwide pandemic-era surge of crimes involving firearms. But that was not sustainable. I knew we had to take very swift action, and our challenges really set us apart, how we dove into them. And I said we have to commit money. We've committed over the last few years over $3 billion to fighting crime, and a lot of that has to do with gun interdiction and thwarting criminals. We've doubled funding to combat gun violence. We partnered with 11 other states. I brought this idea early on, and I said, the guns are coming from out of state. Obviously, we do not have gun manufacturers here, so they're coming in illegally from other states, and we have to do much more to cut off the iron pipeline, which was basically I-81, and also guns that were coming up I-81 up from Pennsylvania gun shows, where people would go down and load up their trunk with guns that they purchased legally in Pennsylvania that are not legal in our state, and brought them up either heading due north to Syracuse or due east to the Bronx, and that was what we were seeing. So we started this alliance with other states. It's been extraordinarily successful. We enhanced our red flag laws, keeping guns away from anyone with a history of propensity toward violence or mental illness, anyone who could pose a danger to themselves or others. That has made a profound difference in how we can stop crimes before they happen. We had to make some hard-fought changes to our bail laws over a 2-year cycle, and just last year changing discovery laws that I know our district attorneys are very happy to have, because this was stopping them from being able to prosecute and be successful in making sure that people that have committed crimes are not recycled back to the streets because of technicalities, which was happening over and over and over. So I'm proud to stand here today and say without hesitation our hard work and record investments and the dedication of whether it's the elected law enforcement or the public servants who put on a uniform every day, we have made an extraordinary difference here in the state of New York. In 2025, shootings in the state of New York are down 60%, including here in Albany County. New York has the 3rd lowest homicide rate in the nation. I want to repeat that. New York has the 3rd lowest homicide rate in the nation, and it's really, our track record is the envy of other states. But even as we celebrate these victories, and I'll never say mission accomplished when it comes to fighting crime, we find ourselves confronted with a rapidly growing threat that undermines what we've already accomplished. And it comes down to a little piece of plastic, no bigger than a Lego. I'm a fan of Legos. I happen to keep Legos with me at all times. Not really. But look at this. This is tiny. This is absolutely tiny. But what it can do is devastating. And you can make this at home under the laws that allow it in the state of New York right now. And so this could be purchased for $25 or 3D printed at home, and it can turn an ordinary pistol into an illegal machine gun. As I said, it has the capability of firing 1,200 rounds per minute. Think what that does if someone has this in a school or a mall or a place of worship. Absolutely devastating. And we know this. These are called switches, which are rampant on our streets and in our communities. Last summer, a gunman in East Harlem fired 15 bullets from what we believe was an illegally modified handgun, killing an innocent bystander, a 69-year-old grandmother who was using a walker to get around. In another incident, a man who had a previous felony conviction fired 12 bullets with a modified polymer 80 ghost gun on a Bronx street in broad daylight. And it's not just New York City. It's all over the state. In Seneca County, a 16-year-old was arrested after the sheriff's office found 426 individual rapid-fire modification devices and a 3D printer. He used these to make the devices at his home. We're seeing these in Westchester, Buffalo, Syracuse, right here in Albany. And to be clear, they're already illegal in New York and nationwide. But why are they here? How are they getting here? Well, we need to go further. As I mentioned in January, I stood here in Albany to announce new proposals to strengthen our gun laws. My proposal would require gun manufacturers who sell in the state of New York to design pistols so they render illegal switches useless, so handguns cannot quickly be turned into machine guns. And we're putting, and I did already, put the gun manufacturers on notice. We will not let you sell the guns here in New York that can be easily converted into such more powerful and more deadly weapons. And we'll make it so you cannot print 3D print these illegal switches at home. We outlawed ghost guns back when I first became governor in 2021. But with the 3D printers, it's become too easy to manufacture gun components at home, which is why I'm proposing that all 3D printers that are sold in the state have blocking software that would make it impossible to print ghost gun components and illegal switches. Because all too often these are being used, as I mentioned, to create entire weapons, homemade killing machines assembled with materials you can purchase or print without a background check, absolutely undermining everything that we stand for in our state, which is allow for the possession, the ownership of guns. I'm a former county clerk. I used to help people register their guns and get their permits. I know how this is done legally, but with extensive background checks. This is subverting the entire process. We'll also make it a crime to sell or even distribute the digital instructions for making 3D printed gun parts. The law will give police more tools, including wiretaps, and strengthen criminal penalties against those who buy and sell the code for printing this lethal weaponry. Now, as I said, we've already gone after the iron pipeline. Now we're going after the plastic pipeline. And when it comes to fighting for public safety, we're not going to, as I said, we're never going to say we're done. We're not resting on our laurels. We have accomplished great things, and I believe we've saved lives in the last 4.5 years. But we have more to go. And as new technologies appear and the criminals get more brazen, we'll do everything in our power to meet this moment and put safeguards in place to protect all New Yorkers. And at a time when we're lacking in federal leadership on this issue, there should be national background checks. There should be national laws that protect everyone, so every state can have the crime rates, the homicide rates as low as we have in New York. But until such time, it falls on states like New York to take charge and protect our residents. So as I continue through the budget process, I want to reiterate to those who are creating homemade killing machines, illegal machine guns, and 3D printed ghost guns, I have a simple message. No longer here in the state of New York, not on my watch, and I want to get this done. So to all of those who challenge this proposition to make New York safer, I want to get this done. I'm very firm in my conviction that this is something that we need to do. With that, I'll turn it over to our District Attorney, Lee Kindlin, and again, we're grateful for all the work he does here keeping the residents of Albany County safe. Mr. DA?
Thank you very much, Governor. Tell you, I'm an old Marine. Those are weapons of war right there that don't belong on our streets, and I couldn't be more grateful that the governor is taking this stand today. Albany County is proud to be here today in support of these proposals. In the summer of 2024, state police executed a search warrant on Orange Street in the city of Albany. What they found tells you everything you need to know about why this legislation matters. 3 loaded ghost guns, otherwise untraceable. One of them equipped with a Glock switch, making it fully automatic. An assault rifle with a 3D-printed autosear. 6 3D-printed handgun lower receivers. 2 3D printers, 1 address. This is not an abstraction. This is our community. Now, this Glock switch, as the governor explained, converts a standard pistol into a weapon that can fire 20 rounds per second. And you understand with an extended magazine, you can actually get 20 to 30 rounds. One trigger pull can fire those 20 rounds, and the recoil is uncontrollable, which means every bystander in range is at risk. These devices are illegal, can be purchased for as little as $25, or the concern here, they can be printed at home. Nationally, everybody needs to know that ATF recoveries of conversion devices have gone up more than 780% in a 4-year span. And Governor Hochul's proposal attacks this at its source, requiring that guns sold in New York be designed so that they cannot easily be converted, and criminalizing the digital blueprints used to manufacture these weapons and components. This is clear, enforceable law, exactly what we prosecutors need. This is the right move. Thank you very much, Governor Hochul. I now turn it over to one of my partners in law enforcement, Sheriff Craig Apple from Albany County.
Good morning, Governor. Thank you again for once. Every time it seems there's an issue, you always address it, and this is another critical need for public safety. So I appreciate you again tackling that. Good morning, Craig Apple, Albany County Sheriff. Let me be clear: Albany County's been doing the work. In 2025, shootings with injury dropped 48% from the year before, and 60% from 2021. Crime overall is down 10%. That didn't happen by accident. It happened with boots on the ground, smart policing, and strong partnerships. Superintendent James, Chief Cox. But I'm telling you right now that progress can disappear fast if we don't stay ahead of the next threat. And that next threat's here. We're seeing handguns turned into machine guns in minutes. A $25 piece of plastic or something made on a 3D printer can turn a pistol into a fully automatic weapon. You can't control that kind of firepower, and when you can't control it, innocent people get hurt and have. This isn't theoretical. This isn't down the road. Last year, the ATF recovered nearly 6,000 of these devices, up nearly 800%. That's not a trend slowing down. And we're seeing it here in New York, in Albany County, and my deputies are dealing with it daily. Let's be honest, switches are already illegal. But manufacturers are still putting out firearms that are easily converted, and that's the loophole. That's the problem. This proposal shuts that door. It puts responsibility where it belongs, on the manufacturers, not on law-abiding gun owners. It doesn't take anything away from responsible people. It just stops companies from selling products that can be turned into illegal weapons in seconds. We're not going to let years of progress get wiped out by a cheap piece of plastic. Not in this county, not in this state. Public safety doesn't happen by chance. It happens because we make tough decisions early. This proposal gives us that ability to get ahead of the problem instead of chasing after it when people get hurt. I strongly urge the legislature, let's get this done. Thank you, Governor. Thank you. I'd like to introduce D.A. Kane, please, from Erie County.
Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you, Governor. I truly appreciate being invited to participate in this important announcement. And I want to commend Governor Kathy Hochul for her steadfast leadership in support of public safety initiatives, especially her commitment to combating gun violence. Governor Hochul's dedication of state funding has enhanced the collaborative efforts of prosecutors, law enforcement, and our community partners to achieve the unprecedented lows that you've heard about today of gun-involved crimes in cities throughout New York State. In Buffalo, we experienced a historically low number of shootings in 2025. We had a previously unseen number of homicides last year of 39. Since we started collecting data, we had not seen a number that low, and it's to the credit of Governor Hochul. As a district attorney, I believe it is critically important that we strengthen our laws to combat emerging crimes as technology continues to evolve. Right now, police and prosecutors are dealing with dangerous evolution, the manufacture of illegal firearms, the ghost guns that you've heard about, including firearms produced by 3D printers. They're untraceable, they're unregulated, and they're becoming increasingly accessible. Criminals can cheaply, quickly, and easily turn a handgun into a do-it-yourself machine gun or make guns from scratch in their homes on these 3D printers. In Erie County, 3D printed guns and components have been recovered during criminal investigations. We know that criminals are attempting to purchase and sell these home manufactured weapons. These easily concealable firearms that are as small as the Lego that the governor showed you are capable of discharging a higher volume of gunfire, and they've been used to commit homicides across Erie County. In February, just a month ago, the New York State Police arrested a 19-year-old in the city of Buffalo on a weapon possession charge after their investigation revealed the seizure of a 3D printer, 3D filament, lower components, extended magazines, and trigger mechanisms. When my office will continue to aggressively prosecute cases like this, we could pursue a higher charge with the new legislation and the legislation that's addressed using the manufacturers of these 3D firearms. The governor's proposal directly addresses this threat by establishing criminal penalties for the illegal manufacture of 3D printed firearms, requiring the reporting of recovered ghost guns, and setting standards to prevent 3D printers from being used to create weapons in the first place. If enacted, these proposals will help district attorneys across the state effectively prosecute the individuals who manufacture these 3D printed firearm components or profit from sharing these dangerous digital instructions. The legislation protects law-abiding gun owners, but it stops kitchens from being gun factories. We have made real progress in reducing gun violence, but we cannot afford to fall behind as technology changes. We have to keep up with the technology. While New York, as the governor noted, has the strongest gun laws, our laws must change as criminals adapt. These proposals will give prosecutors new tools to hold offenders accountable and help prevent these weapons from reaching our streets in the first place. As the Erie County District Attorney, my top priority is protecting the people in our community and ensuring that our laws keep pace with these emerging threats. Today's announcement by Governor Kathy Hochul represents a critical step toward that mission. And again, thank you, Governor, for your continued leadership and for inviting me here to address the group. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. All right, you heard from the people who know best. The people who are out there trying to keep our streets safe, our sheriffs, our district attorneys, our police chiefs. All across the state of New York, people are looking to us to do the right thing once we've now seen this newly emerging threat. The cases are real. You've heard about them directly, and it is my mission to ensure that in the next couple of weeks, next week, we are able to get this through the legislature and have their full support for something that I would have to put in my no-brainer category. When you see a problem this serious and how it is unfolding and lives are being lost, I think everyone should feel the same commitment that I do to use this opportunity to change our laws so we can get ahead of this. So, Joe Popkins here as well? Okay.
Governor, you said that there were people that, even though you consider a no-brainer, there are people that oppose this. Could you sort of, who opposes this and what are the arguments on the other side?
Obviously, there are people that are, held captive by the gun lobbies in our state who are, think that this is hurting their Second Amendment rights. I reject that. That is not what we're doing here. We're keeping people alive. And also, I think people are concerned about the impact on the manufacturer. They can adapt. Everybody adapts. People have figured out ways to adapt. So that is something that is not a concern. So, and there's always those who think that we shouldn't be increasing any more penalties, that they're high enough. I reject that. I will always stand on the side of public safety. So we'll see. You can ask everybody across town how they feel about it.
Governor, a part of the legislation you proposed this year has a software component requiring the people who make 3D printers to block certain aspects of what can be printed. For the thousands of 3D printers that are already out there, many people do not regularly update these machines. Do you have any plans to address the 3D printers that are already out there?
They're out there. Joe, if we figure that out, okay, all right. Introduce yourself.
So part of the proposal,
Introduce yourself first.
Sabrina Beer, Deputy Secretary for Public Safety. Part of the proposal is to acknowledge that this has to be a phased approach. So phase one of the approach is gathering a lot of experts together, and phase two is them making recommendations on what these regulations should be. So right now, as our legislation, as we proposed it, doesn't prescribe in particular how that has to go. It is just that printers sold in New York State will have to have this technology that blocks the printer from making the gun or the component parts.
And that's specific to printers that are sold after those regulations go into effect, not retroactive to existing machinery?
As of right now, that is not specified.
Thank you.
So I know in your budget you mentioned gathering the experts together as part of the first phase, and I know in the budget it says something, and I'm not entirely 100%, but it's people from SUNY, it's people from state police. Have you had any conversations in terms of how this implementation would actually work? How would it be able to, scan all of these different kinds of files and make sure nothing gets past any kind of, firewall, or in terms of how the system would actually work?
This is my subject matter expert.
We have had numerous conversations. In part, it's going to depend on where the legislation finally shakes out at the end, but we've had a number of conversations, not just with our government partners, but also with our industry partners. This is work that has started in other areas. Previously the federal government was working on a program like this for the switches in particular. So there are a lot of academics who are already thinking about this and thinking about like the library of files that the software technology would pull from in order to block it. So those conversations are ongoing.
Curious, you mentioned that you've been discussing this, or you want this in the budget. Are legislative leaders are you guys in alignment on this issue, or are you concerned that this could be a sticking point?
I'm working hard to make sure that it's not a sticking point.
Piece could be, is it language about a specific issue, or can you go into what could be a problem?
I think it's fair to ask the leaders in the legislature if they're on board with as we've described this. That is a fair conversation to have at this time. We feel very confident that all the elements of ours make sense, and I believe that they're all doable, and I do believe that there could be an opportunity for everyone to get behind it as we've proposed it without any watering down.
And I'm just curious, one other thing, there was a ruling last week that New York can no longer enforce its social media disclosure requirement for concealed carry permits. I was just curious if someone could respond to that, and how you're going to keep safety in those applications.
That's frustrating because we know what we need to do. We are a state. We know the challenges within our boundaries. And when the Supreme Court has a different opinion, it is frustrating because it was our state that suffered when a crazed teenager had been radicalized online and he showed a trail of his thoughts on social media. And yet he was able to walk into a gun store on his 18th birthday here in New York and buy a gun. Of course, he went over the border into into Pennsylvania, and was able to get a high-capacity magazine that turned it into the killing machine that killed 10 of my neighbors in Buffalo. So perhaps the Supreme Court doesn't realize that this is not just hypothetical. This is based on real facts, that I want to next time thwart that mass murderer from being able to do what they did, that we'd have the ability, before someone is given the privilege of a license for a gun in our state, that we have any indication that they've already indicated in a way that is available, that we should be able to see that this is not someone you want to have a gun living next door to you or anywhere in your state, that there's already signs. So we've been denied that ability now. We'll try to figure out ways to get around and still get the results we want, but have we figured out a path? I don't think we know. You know, this is, I've got to follow the Supreme Court, but no, I'm not happy about it.
So part of your legislation would make it unlawful to possess digital instructions about how to make these switches. That seems to be kind of a new area of law. I don't believe it's unlawful to possess instructions on all kinds of terrible things that you could imagine, making explosives, etc. So, because of the First Amendment. So why will this be different, and why do you think this should be a separate class from possessing instructions or knowledge about any kind of terrible thing you might want to do?
Well, this is more akin to possessing contraband, right? So it's unlawful to possess it with a nefarious intent. So the intent to distribute it to another or transport it to another, or the intent to use it to create a firearm. So it isn't exactly new in that respect. It is more akin to drugs and other contraband.
How will you assess someone's intent? Download instructions on how to make what appears to be kind of some right angles in plastic.
District attorneys and law enforcement have all sorts of tools that they use to assess intent every day. There's consciousness of guilt evidence, what people are, if for the intent to distribute, for example, if they are posting it for sale on a website or something like that and they haven't yet distributed it, or if they upload it onto their printer and have taken steps toward trying to actually use it for the nefarious intent.
Governor, you noted that the resistance to this proposal is coming both from the gun lobby and a little bit on the manufacturing side. Is one of those taking precedence over kind of the weight against this? And for the manufacturers in particular, is there kind of resistance more, the feasibility argument of doing this, or on the side of that they shouldn't have to do this at all?
Well, California passed a law like this, and they're a large market as well as New York, and they're making the adaptations for California, right? And so there should not be an objection to what we're doing in New York. This is probably going to be now the national standard of what they're doing. And I would presume that given their exposure in lawsuits, that they would also want to be doing what's right in this case to insulate them from culpability.
The manufacturers of the printers, I mean.
The Glocks, I'm talking about the guns that are being converted.
What about on the printer side, the companies that are designing that tech?
Yeah, they need to do this. Nobody ever wants to do anything that they haven't devised on their own. But I believe that they're going to want to continue selling printers in the state of New York. I'm sure it's a large market for them, and this is an adjustment that they would have to agree makes sense. I don't know that the first inventor of the 3D printer envisioned this being a homemade, a way to make homemade weapons of mass destruction. So I'll give them that grace, assume that's not what they intended, and we're going to help them get to a place where that does not happen.
Are they arguing feasibility is the issue, though, or that they just don't feel that they need to do this?
From the printers?
We've had a lot of different conversations, and there are certainly going to be technological challenges. I think it's figuring out what works for each particular type of printer. I will say, by and large, the printer companies have expressed they desperately don't want their machines to be used to make guns. So I feel confident we can get there with feasibility.
Great. All right. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate you coming out.